One of the most important things you can do to help your child is probably not what you think. It isn't finding the perfect parenting strategy. It isn't getting every school adjustment right. It isn't choosing the perfect therapy. And it isn't trying to fix every difficulty at once. It is working out which part of your child's life is creating the greatest strain right now and starting there. Because when families feel overwhelmed, the answer is rarely do more. Usually, the answer is find the right place to begin. And by the end of this video, I'm going to help you do exactly that. You'll be able to look at 8 different areas of family life, identify the one that could make the biggest difference to your child right now, and choose one practical next step. And stay with me until the end, because I've also put together a completely free set of tools to help you do this for your own family. So you don't just finish this video understanding the confidence wheel, you finish knowing where you're going to start. Okay, let's begin. Before we go any further, I'd like you to do something for me. Picture your child, not their diagnosis, not the last school meeting, not the appointment you're waiting for, not the meltdown you had yesterday, just your child. Picture their face, the way they laugh when something really tickles them, the things they love, the subjects they could talk about for hours, the little quirks that make them completely and unmistakably themselves, because maybe they're funny, creative, curious, kind, determined, intensely passionate about the things they love. Perhaps they notice things other people miss. Perhaps they make you laugh every single day. Now, hold that child in your mind, because that child is the reason we are here. Not because they're naughty, not because they're disruptive, not because they're too much, and certainly not because they need fixing. They may find some parts of life harder than other children. They may need extra understanding and extra support. They may need different strategies or different environments. But before they are any label, diagnosis, assessment or report, they are a child who deserves to be understood. And I think that matters, because once ADHD, autism, anxiety or developmental differences become part of family life, it is very easy for everything to become dominated by problems, appointments, forms, reports, school meetings, behaviour, sleep, friendships, medication, waiting lists, research or anything else. And sometimes we become so busy trying to solve the difficulties that we quietly lose sight of the child whose difficulties belong to. So throughout this video, I want us to keep coming back to that child. Not how do I fix this, but what is making life difficult for my child and what might help? That's a completely different question. And if we haven't met before, my name is Dr. Harry Woodward. I'm a consultant paediatrician and I help children with ADHD and autism and their families to thrive. But I'm also a parent, and one of the things parenthood has taught me is that knowing the theory and actually applying it at 7:35 on a Monday morning are two very different things. So this video isn't about perfect parenting. It isn't about 8 more things you should be doing. My hope is that you leave with something much simpler. One area to focus on, one thing to try, and hopefully a little more confidence than you had when you pressed play. I've met thousands of families over the years, and for a long time I thought families were coming to see me because of one main problem: a behaviour problem, a school problem, a sleep problem, an attention problem. But gradually I realised that this was almost never the whole story. The child referred because of behaviour might barely be sleeping. The child referred because they won't go to school might be overwhelmed by anxiety. The child who won't listen might be struggling with executive functioning. The child spending every possible moment on a screen might have found the one place where they feel competent, connected, and in control. And again, I found that the thing everybody was focused on was not necessarily the place where the biggest opportunity for change existed. Eventually, I stopped asking what is the main problem and started asking which part of this child's life is placing the greatest strain on everything else. That question changed the way I thought about supporting families, and it led me to the confidence wheel. Imagine a bicycle wheel. There is a tyre around the outside, the hub in the middle, and connecting everything together are the spokes. If one spoke becomes slightly weak, the wheel may wobble. You can probably keep riding, but if several spokes are under strain, every bump in the road becomes harder, and if enough become weakened, the whole journey becomes unstable. For many families, that is what life feels like, not because anybody is failing, but because several important parts of family life are under pressure at the same time. That is why I developed the confidence wheel. It has 8 spokes: sleep, emotional regulation, family relationships, school and learning, anxiety and worry, screens and technology, treatment and support, and parent well-being. They are not 8 separate problems, they interact constantly. Poor sleep affects emotional regulation. Anxiety affects school. School spills into home. Screens affect sleep. Family conflict affects everyone. And exhausted parents have fewer emotional reserves to manage all of it. So the purpose of the wheel is not to give you 8 more jobs. It is to help you see the whole picture and ask, which spoke, if it became stronger, might make several other things easier too. And before we go around the wheel, I'd love you to do something for me. Look at the 8 spokes and tell me in the comments which one feels hardest for your family right now. You can simply write sleep, emotions, relationships, school, anxiety, screens, support, or me. And if you genuinely cannot choose because several feel equally difficult, you can write everything. I do read the comments and it helps me understand which areas families most want help with. And if the idea of choosing one spoke rather than trying to fix everything has already made this feel a little more manageable, give this video a like. It helps more parents find the series. Now, let's go around the wheel. Let's start with sleep. And I start here deliberately because when sleep is not working, almost nothing else works as well as it could. A child who is chronically tired may find it harder to concentrate, harder to regulate their emotions and manage frustration, harder to learn and cope with transitions, and find it harder to control impulses. And of course, when a child doesn't sleep, very often the parents aren't sleeping either. So by breakfast, everybody may already be running on half a battery. One family came to see me because of behaviour: huge meltdowns, explosive mornings, arguments, poor concentration. Everybody was understandably focused on behaviour, so I asked one very simple question: tell me about bedtime. The parents looked at each other and laughed, not because it was funny, but because they hadn't had a proper night's sleep in years. Their son took hours to settle. He woke repeatedly throughout the night. Everyone started every morning exhausted, and gradually it became clear. The behaviour wasn't necessarily the first domino. Sleep was. So instead of chasing every outburst individually, they began strengthening the sleep spoke: routine, addressing anxiety, sensory needs, the bedroom environment, and additional help where needed. There was no miracle, just a series of sensible changes applied consistently. And eventually one parent said, "It feels like we've got our son back." That is why I ask families, before you tackle the most visible difficulty, ask whether something more basic might be feeding into it. Sometimes the first domino is sleep. And if you're listening to this thinking, actually, sleep is the thing affecting everything else in our house, I've recorded a full sleep confidence video where I go much deeper into why sleep can be difficult for children with ADHD or autism and what can actually help. I'll link the complete Confidence Wheel playlist below this video. You don't need to go searching for it now. Finish this one first. Then, if sleep is your spoke, that is the one I'd watch next. Now let's talk about emotional regulation, and this is an area where parenting has repeatedly humbled me. One morning, on a Monday, my son Chester came downstairs looking incredibly pleased with himself. Hair brushed, shoes on, school bag packed, completely ready. And do you know what my brain noticed first? The one thing that he had got wrong. It was games day and he was wearing his normal school uniform. My first instinct was, "Chester, you've got the wrong clothes on," but fortunately I caught myself because What had I just missed? He had organised himself, got dressed, packed his things, taken responsibility. So instead I said, "That's brilliant. You got yourself completely ready," and his face lit up. And then I said, "There's just one more thing. It's games today. Shall we swap into your kit?" The outcome was identical. He still changed his clothes, but emotionally the interaction was completely different. One conversation began with failure, the other began with success, and it reminded me of a phrase I use constantly: connection before correction. Connect with your child before you correct them. That doesn't mean ignoring boundaries. It means recognizing that children are far more able to hear our guidance when they still feel connected to us. So next time something goes wrong, ask, is there anything here I can notice before I correct? And I'd be really interested to know, what is the hardest emotional moment in your house? Is it mornings? Is it after school? Homework? Is it bedtime? Put one word in the comments, because there are some very clear patterns that come up again and again for families. And if meltdowns, shutdowns, or huge emotional reactions are the spoke you need most help with, I've also recorded a full emotional regulation confidence video where I go much deeper into what to do before, during, and after those moments. Again, it's in the Confidence Wheel playlist, and I'll link to it at the end of the video. And that brings us naturally to family relationships. One parent once told me that she reached bedtime and suddenly realised that every single conversation she'd had with her child that day was an instruction. Brush your teeth, put your shoes on, hurry up, pack your bag, do your homework, turn the screen off. They'd spent the entire day together, but they hadn't actually enjoyed each other. So they changed one thing. They protected 10 minutes every evening. Nothing needed fixing, no teaching, no reminders, no correction. Sometimes they kicked a football, sometimes they played cards, sometimes they just talked. Did all the arguments disappear? Of course not. But something changed underneath them. The relationship became stronger. And when the relationship became stronger, many of the difficult moments became easier to repair. Children do not only need managing, they need enjoying. Relationships are built through hundreds of tiny moments that quietly say, "I like being with you." If that idea has landed with you, especially if family life has started to feel like one instruction after another, I've got a full family relationships video in this series. That one goes much deeper into connection before correction, power struggles, boundaries, and repair after difficult moments. So if relationships are your spoke, make a note of that one for later. And if this way of looking at things is useful, please consider subscribing. I've built an entire series around these 8 spokes with one practical deep dive for each area. So rather than trying to solve everything in one video, you can choose the spoke that matters most for your family and go deeper there. Now, let's think about school. Have you ever looked at your child and thought, "I know you're clever, so why is this so hard?" I once met a child whose teacher described him as one of the cleverest pupils in the class and one of the least productive. He wasn't lacking intelligence. He didn't lack ideas, ambition, or knowledge. He struggled to consistently show what he knew. Every task required planning, organisation, getting started, holding instructions in mind, and moving from one activity to another. People saw he isn't trying, but a more useful interpretation was his brain is struggling to get into gear, and that gives us one of the most powerful questions in this entire webinar. Instead of what is wrong with this child, ask what is making this difficult for this child. The first question searches for blame. The second searches for barriers. And once we identify barriers, we can begin changing them. Many neurodivergent children do not need lower expectations. They need different pathways to reach the same destination. If school is a thing creating the biggest pressure for your family right now, put school in the comments. I suspect there will be quite a few of you. And I've recorded a full school and learning video where I go deeper into executive functioning, homework, classroom adjustments, confidence, and working with school. That one is also in the playlist. The next spoke is anxiety and worry. And one of the reasons anxiety gets missed is that it doesn't always look frightened. Sometimes it looks angry, avoidant, controlling, defiant, or like a child who simply refuses to go somewhere. I remember a young person who had completely stopped attending school. Some people thought she was oppositional, others thought she was manipulating her parents, but privately she described something very different. Every Sunday evening she began feeling sick. By Monday morning her heart was racing. Being laughed at, she was imagining everything that could go wrong, getting an answer wrong, embarrassing herself. By Monday morning her heart was racing, and eventually home became safer than facing those feelings. She wasn't simply refusing school, she was escaping anxiety. That is why I often use the iceberg analogy. The behaviour is what we see above the water, but underneath may sit fear, shame, sensory overload, uncertainty, fatigue, social pressure. So sometimes the most useful question is not, how do I stop this behaviour? It is, what might my child be trying to tell me? And if anxiety is the spoke for you, I've recorded a full video from worry to confidence, where we go much deeper into avoidance, reassurance, body clues, and how to help children take small steps towards confidence. But stay with me here, because the next spoke is the one that causes enormous tension in many homes: screens and technology. This is the one of those topics where family life can turn into a negotiation surprisingly quickly. But rather than beginning with, how do I get my child off the screen, I often ask, what is the screen giving them? I once asked a father this. He thought for a moment and said, that's where his friends are. Then, that's where he's good at something. And finally, that's where he wins. Suddenly, we weren't talking about screens anymore. We were talking about belonging, achievement, confidence and connection. That doesn't mean screens shouldn't have boundaries. Of course they should. Sleep matters, exercise matters, face-to-face relationships matter. But if we only remove the screen without understanding the need, it is meeting, we may create a huge battle while leaving the underlying problem completely untouched. So before asking, how do I reduce screens, try, what need is this screen currently meeting? Once you understand the need, you have many more options. Let me know in the comments, what is the hardest screen moment in your house? Turning it off, bedtime, gaming, YouTube, social media? Just one word is enough. And if screens are your spoke, I've also recorded a full Screens Without the Battles video, where I go much deeper into transitions, boundaries, online safety, and why screens can be particularly compelling for ADHD and autistic children. Now, treatment and support. And I want to begin with something very simple. Support is not failure. Needing additional support does not mean you have parented badly. It means your child may need different tools. I remember one young person with ADHD who started treatment and later asked, is this what everyone else's brain feels like? That sentence has stayed with me because treatment had not changed that child's personality. They were still funny, still creative, energetic and complete with themselves, but some of the friction had reduced. And support can look very different for different children. School adjustments, speech and language therapy and occupational therapy, parent education and psychological support, medication and lifestyle changes. The goal is never, how do we make this child less themselves? The goal is, how do we remove some of the barriers that are preventing this child from thriving? That is a completely different philosophy. And if this is the area you're wrestling with, school support, therapies, medication, or simply knowing what comes next, I recorded a full treatment and support video as part of this series. Now, that one is specifically designed to help you move from, there are so many treatment options, I don't know where to start, to, I understand the choices and I know what our next step is. And finally, perhaps the spoke parents neglect most often. You. Parents frequently tell me they feel guilty doing something for themselves, going for a walk, seeing a friend, going to bed early, having half an hour alone. And there is often a quiet thought underneath it. I should be using this time for my child. But think about the safety demonstration on an aeroplane. They always tell you, put your own oxygen mask on first, not because you matter more than your child, but because you are no use to them if you have completely run out of air. Children borrow our calm, our perspective, our hope, and when our own reserves are empty, staying patient, thoughtful and regulated becomes much harder. Looking after yourself is not taking something away from your child. It is strengthening part of their support system. You do not have to be everything. You do not have to do everything. You simply need enough left to keep showing up. And if you are watching this and quietly thinking, actually, I think I might be the spoke that needs attention, please don't dismiss that. Put me in the comments if that is where you are. I've recorded a full You Matter Too parent wellbeing video because parents so often put themselves at the very bottom of the list, and that one may be the most important next video for you. Now, look at what we have actually been talking about: sleep, emotional regulation, relationships, school, anxiety, screens, treatment, and you. On the surface, these seem like 8 very different subjects, but underneath them is one idea that connects everything. Understanding changes how we respond. When we understand that the child who won't concentrate may be exhausted, we respond differently. When we understand that the child refusing school may be terrified, we respond differently. When we understand that a screen may be providing belonging, we respond differently. When we understand that an outburst may be overwhelm rather than deliberate defiance, we respond differently. And that is why I keep coming back to curiosity, not why are they doing this to me, but what is actually making this difficult for them. You do not need to understand everything perfectly. You simply need to keep trying to understand the child in front of you. Because your child does not need a perfect parent. They need someone who keeps showing up, someone who keeps learning, someone who keeps noticing them, someone who still believes in them on the days when they are struggling to believe in themselves. By the way, all 8 of these deep dive videos are collected together in one Confidence Wheel playlist. You do not need to watch all 8, please don't. The whole point is to choose the spoke that matters most right now and go there next. I'll link the playlist below this video and again at the end. So now I want you to do the most important thing in this entire video. Look at the wheel again. Do not ask which of these could we improve, because the answer might be all of them. Instead, just ask, if just one spoke became stronger over the next few months, which one would make the biggest difference to my child and my family? Maybe it is sleep, maybe anxiety, maybe screens, maybe school, maybe emotions, maybe your relationship, maybe treatment, or perhaps it is your own well-being. Choose one. That is your starting point, not 8, 1. And now I'd really like you to commit to it. Put your spoke in the comments, just one word. Writing it down makes it a little more real. School, sleep, emotions, relationships, anxiety, support, screens, or me. And more importantly, it stops the wheel becoming 8 interesting ideas and turns it into one decision, because confidence rarely arrives all at once. It grows through small successes. One calmer morning, one better bedtime, one school adjustment, one repaired argument, one worry faced, one child who feels understood. That is how families move from chaos to confidence, one spoke at a time. Now, right at the beginning, I promised you something practical. So here it is. I've put together a completely free set of tools to help you take the confidence wheel and actually use it for your own family. Just scan the QR code on screen right now or use the link below this video. This is designed to help you step back and see the whole picture so you can work out which area is creating the greatest pressure rather than trying to fix everything at once. You'll be able to look more closely at each of the 8 spokes, understand what may be sitting underneath the difficulties you're seeing, and identify where change might have the biggest knock-on effect. You'll have practical resources to help you think through sleep, emotions, relationships, school, anxiety, screens, treatment, and your own well-being without turning any of those areas into another overwhelming project. And most importantly, you'll have a simple way to turn everything we've talked about into one priority, one practical action, one next step. You'll also get access to the wider confidence wheel framework so you can come back to it whenever the next challenge changes. I've brought all of that together to help you move from everything feels important and I don't know where to begin to I can see what is creating the biggest pressure. I know which spoke we're focusing on, and I know what we're going to try next. There is nothing you need to buy, no obligation, and please do not try to work through everything at once. That would completely defeat the point. Choose the spoke that matters most, choose the tool that fits it, and start there. So scan the QR code or use the link below this video, and I'll give you the free access to the whole toolkit. And if you know another parent who is currently feeling overwhelmed by all the things they think they should be doing, please share this video with them. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can give somebody is not another answer, it is permission to stop trying to solve everything at once. And I want to finish by coming back to the promise I made in the first few seconds of this video. I told you that one of the most important things you can do for your child probably wasn't what you thought. It wasn't finding the perfect parenting strategy, it wasn't the perfect school, and it wasn't the perfect therapy, or somehow learning to manage all 8 parts of family life at once. It was much simpler. Understand where the greatest strain is coming from and start there, because meaningful change rarely happens through one enormous breakthrough. It happens through one conversation, one bedtime, one adjustment, one repaired relationship, and one child who feels understood. So when this video ends, please don't carry the whole wheel away with you. Hold your child's face in your mind and make one small promise. Maybe you'll work on sleep. Maybe you'll ask school for help. Maybe you'll choose connection before correction. Maybe you'll try to understand what is sitting underneath the behaviour. Maybe you'll ask for some help yourself. Just one thing, because confidence is not something families suddenly find. It's something we build. One small success, one small step, one spoke at a time. And if you'd like me to help you work through those spokes one by one, subscribe to the channel. That is exactly what this series is here for. Before you go, I want to help you decide what to watch next. If you already know which spoke matters most for your family, go straight to the Confidence Wheel playlist on screen at the end and choose that video. But if you're still not sure, or if you're carrying a lot of this yourself, the video I recommend you watch next is You Matter Too, supporting parent well-being in neurodivergent families, because you are part of your child's support system too.